broadcasting. All right. Good morning, FCS family, all these students, and we're excited that we get the echo out of here. There we go. Wanted to get a chance to have everybody come in and talk to some alumni and hear from you guys, these alumni in person. You all know me. I'm Mr. Snavely, Development Coordinator. For those who are watching online or through YouTube, you see my email address there and the name below. We have 3 different alumni joining us today. We were really hoping when we first started talking about this to have it be live and in person. Of course, everything was planned to be in person just recently, but it hasn't happened quite that way right now. Originally, this would be part of our Spirit Week, and today would have been Professional Day. And so all the students would be coming in and very professional. You'd be all dressed up like your lawyers or whatever else in your suits. And in ELA class, you would have been giving class presentations and persuasive speeches. But instead, you're at home in your jerseys or just your pajamas, I don't know. And so we're celebrating Professional Day remotely, and we're having these alumni join us. And we'll get a chance to meet them in just a moment. Wanted to kind of give a little bit of perspective as well. What we're doing is we want to give you a chance as our students to learn from different alumni who graduated throughout the years and see where God has moved them and really blessed them in their different pursuits that they have. We want to make sure we recognize that as a Christian school, we may have a different definition of success than other people may have. In our minds, success does not mean you have over, 1,000 followers on social media. And when you speak, thousands of people listen to you and you have power or influence. That doesn't necessarily make you successful. Money doesn't make us successful. But we're successful when we're able to make an impact on those around us, when we reflect God's glory and his excellence in the place where he has us. And we're bearing fruit, right? 6th grade Bible class, we've been talking about bearing fruit as Christians and what that looks like. And so in one sense, if your takeaway from this webinar is, I want to walk with God and be the most successful janitor that I possibly can be, then this has been a success. This time of this webinar has been well worth it. So we want to help introduce these different alumni and hear from them and their own perceptions and their own explanations of success. So we'll kind of connect with each of them one at a time. Esther Chai, glad to have you join us, Esther. Esther graduated in 2016, 4 years ago. You were one of our co-valedictorians back then. I think when you and Gabe were valedictorian, was that the first time that it had happened in our school history? Do you remember?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Actually, you may have seen that this year we've had co-valedictorians again. So for the second time ever in school history, we had that experience. And then since then you went to Townsend Harris, and we'll be glad to hear more about your experience with that high school process and application. And you've really been able to have a lot of different responsibilities. President of the Science Olympiad there, concert master of the Symphonic Orchestra as well. You mind sharing just really briefly what that role has been at the Science Olympiad, what that has included?
Yeah, so Science Olympiad is a national competition, and you compete in events ranging from every scientific discipline. So I specialized in mostly biology events, and basically you would have a partner and you would compete in these very specific events against other high schools, and you would compete at invitationals, regional competitions, and even state competitions. And so at Townsend Harris, I'm the president of that club. So I lead the students in competing every year. And for the orchestra, as concert master, we just play lots of pieces. It's really fun and enjoyable. Yeah.
I imagine we could kind of get your input on how to keep a balanced life with all the stuff that you're doing in school. You may not be hanging out with your friends for 3 hours a day as our guests, but maybe you could share something. Maybe some of our students have questions about that as well in the chat. I think that's the main thing. And then obviously, Esther, since then, you've been able to apply to colleges and you've been accepted to Harvard. Really excited for you and that new pursuit. What are you going to be studying at Harvard?
As of now, I think I'm going to be majoring in cellular and molecular biology and maybe doing some computer science, but that might change. So that's just for now.
Well, it's allowed to change. The bachelor's degree can be very flexible at times, and it doesn't put you in a rut for the next 20 years of your life. So we're excited for you, Esther, and we're glad to hear from your experience so far. Rachel Burnson, glad you could join us as well. Rachel was graduated in 2005, and you went to Roslyn High School, and then graduated and went to Williams College. Where is Williams College? Can you kind of
That
give us
is
a map
in,
where that is?
sure, it's in northwestern Massachusetts.
Okay, what led you to a college outside of New York?
I wanted a change of pace. Williams is kind of in the middle of nowhere in the Berkshires, and so I just wanted to get out in a more rural setting instead of being in the city like where I'm from.
Okay, so maybe a change of pace was healthy. And if you studied English literature there, maybe you get a chance to read and reflect on the classics. And I know the education didn't end there. You ended up at the University of Reading over in England getting a master's in education. And I know that master's is more English language teaching. So you're not teaching literature necessarily. You're more teaching it like an ESL format. What pointed you towards the ESL format?
After I graduated from Williams, I had the opportunity to teach abroad in China for a year. And after that experience, I realized that I really liked connecting with students who were trying to learn English as a second language. And so, after some more time practicing my teaching skills and really making sure I wanted to be an educator, I went on to get my master's and decided to specialize in English language teaching.
And how much time did you spend between the college degree and then starting your master's degree?
3 years.
3 years. So sometimes we need a little bit of life experience to get a sense of if I really enjoy this, do I want to do more education? Do I want to explore this some more?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
we're thankful for that. And I know you're able to really be active with the online format, teaching ESL online. And I know we see you sometimes on Instagram and different things interacting with our school. So we're excited to learn more from you in that experience as well. Tony Iliakostas is with us also. And Tony graduated in 2003. He went to the Q Forest School for high school in 2007 and graduated 2007. On to Fordham University, and he got a bachelor's in communications and media studies. And then you just weren't tired of school yet, I guess. So went to New York Law School and graduated with the JD. Why don't you kind of walk us through that thought process? What pointed you towards the idea of law and being a legal expert?
I think I decided the choice to go to law school probably around I feel like the seed kind of started a little bit in the very beginning of high school. It was funny, my trajectory for my career in kindergarten at FCS, I wanted to be a zookeeper. Throughout some weird time in fourth grade, fifth grade, probably going into eighth grade, investment banking. I hate math now, but that's another point. That's another conversation. So then I shifted a little bit more towards the law, and it interested me a lot, mainly because of the opportunity to debate, but to also have the opportunity to have, sort of like this cross-cultural opportunity to share different opinions. And and my mom, of course, works with the Department of Justice and as an interpreter, so I've kind of been exposed to the law in some respect. So over time, I kind of developed it, and the law is very diverse. It comes in various areas. So for me personally, it wasn't really criminal law or contract or property law that necessarily interested me, but it was actually entertainment law, intellectual property law, sort of riding off the coattails of the communications and media studies degree that I got at Fordham, using that as the backbone to pursue my career in the law.
And I mute myself. Through all those different twists and turns, you ended up landing now at ABC, I understand, and working with ABC News and making sure everything is copyrighted properly. Have you had any like big red flags that were about to be aired and, oh no, we're gonna share this video without permission, we're gonna get sued for millions of dollars? What's been an example like that?
Actually, sadly, I have had to deal with way too many times situations where our producers never reached out to the right owner of video or photos, and they just aired it just because, or because they found it online and they thought it would look really good in the story. So unfortunately, I've had to do serious damage control and try to work with our show's producers, whether it's Good Morning America or World News elsewhere, to try to lower the cost necessary. It always starts with, I'm so sorry for the mistake. It was a mistake on our part. What can we do to fix this? So what would have been maybe a a $200 fee to normally license photos all of a sudden went up 5 times. So now $1,000 we have to spend. But there have been fees of upwards of $50,000, even $100,000, simply because we didn't acquire the right permission to use photos or videos.
So for all of our students who like to pirate things online, or search Google Images for your presentations, if it's going to be a very official, formal format, be cautious about that. It's a pretty expensive apology, honestly.
Oh yeah.
Well, great. And we have several people joining us, attendees. We're glad all of you are joining us. We want to give you guys a chance to ask questions to our panelists. So there's a Q&A feature. You can ask questions to them now. And we have some other questions for them in the meantime. And we want to hear from you, our students, as well. We're going to ask you a panel. You're going to be on the panel too. You didn't know that, but you are. And we're going to give you a chance to tell us what you're thinking about high school. What are you excited about? What are you nervous about? What career do you see yourself in? And so while you're thinking of some questions to add to the Q&A feature, and we're going to give you the poll in a moment, I want to hear really briefly from these 3 panelists what your favorite memory from FCS was. Let's look at the past to start with, and then we'll kind of bring ourselves up to the present and advice you would give us as well. Maybe Esther, we'll go back to you. What some of your favorite memories from FCS, goofy things? What stood out to you?
I think one of my favorite memories was ripping pizza boxes with my friends. Like, I don't know if you guys still do that, but after we finished the pizza, we would rip them up, and Mr. Austin would have us like put them in a garbage can and we take them out. And I don't know, I just thought that was really fun because I got to spend time with my friends and like chat. Another thing I really liked was the concerts. I liked the preparation. Sometimes they were long, but I still really liked the concerts. Yeah.
That's great. I think we still do the pizza boxes. Mrs. Pena, our new lunch supervisor, she gives attention to that. That's great. Rachel, what stood out to you from your time at FCS?
I think really just the relationships I developed with my teachers. One fond memory I have is back when Mrs. Blatt was a 5th grade teacher. She read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe with us. And when we watched the movie together, she brought in Turkish Delight for us to try. I didn't really like it, but I really remember that memory, and that stuck out to me. And I just appreciate the teachers that I had.
I think 5th grade still reads that book together. And
Nice.
we watched the newer Disney version of the Narnia, but I'm sure, did you watch the old BBC version?
Yeah.
I'm sure, and maybe Tony can give copyright info. I think we didn't break anything there, but maybe the idea was the more modern one. It's not quite as accurate, but it's a good discussion point, helping our students analyze. Maybe we can tell Miss Nelson, our 5th grade teacher, about Turkish Delight. She could keep that in mind. That'd be pretty neat as well. All right, Tony, so what stood out to you from your time?
Actually, just before I go to my memory, I vividly remember the Turkish Delight, and it was to the point that I loved it so much that I begged my parents to take a special trip to Jasmine, which is where she got it, to go get those Turkish Delights. So I literally am like Turkish Delight fanboy alert here. Anyway, my fondest memory. I know it's kind of cheesy in the moment of the Spirit Week, but it's very appropriate. I vividly remember jogathons. That's always been a memory of mine. And I remember usually the same, usual suspects. Mr. and Mrs. Muchmore, who were the former 7th and 8th grade teachers at FCS, would walk in unison, holding hands. And it was like very, like you saw them making the laps around the Casino Park Lake there. Obviously, all the kids competing with one another. I was usually last in these jogathons, but whatever. The barbecues that used to happen when FCS used to be on Oak Avenue, the sodas, I think the sense of camaraderie that really existed in FCS during such a special time. It was like you put school aside and you just celebrate the rich history that such an amazing establishment presents. And really it's a celebration of a ministry, because that's exactly what FCS is.
Yeah. And I think what I'm hearing from all of our different memories, it wasn't necessarily like this class or this period, but it was the experience with friends, sometimes outside of class. And yet we also recognize that the foundation of everything is laid class by class, period by period. The instruction is important as well. And we can kind of share a lot. Right now, our students are in the middle of remote learning. We're in quarantine. So let's fast forward 20 years. If we ask them, what was it like for you to go to FCS? I guarantee you, everybody's going to say, the quarantine, Zoom, how I hate and love thee, right? There's a frustration with this remote stuff, but we're glad that you could join us. All right, we need to ask our students questions. So students, you're attendees. We're going to throw a poll out there to you right now, and we'll give our panelists a chance to vote. Why not, right? So you're going to see a series of 3 questions. The first question, what part of high school are you most curious about? What part of high school are you most curious about? The classes, the added responsibility, the teachers, the friends, maybe just the size, if you know it's going to be a much bigger high school than where you are. And panelists, I guess, if you can see that, want to ask as yourself or answer as yourself from back in the day. What would you be most curious about? Second question, what high school are you hoping to attend? There are private schools, whether Christian or Catholic schools. You see some samples there. Maybe specialized high schools, perhaps a regional high school. And then when you finish all 3 questions, then we can start seeing the results. So we're not really at the point where we can analyze all this yet. And then the third question, which I think is the most interesting one, what kind of job do you see yourself having? Do you think maybe you'll be working with people in the field of medicine? Maybe you're working with people like interactive talking. So whether you're teaching, or counseling, perhaps a ministry kind of position in a church, perhaps. What if you're working with people in terms of music or performance art? You love acting and you see yourself there in the future. What about if you like working with things like computers, science? What if you like working with things in words? So you're a word person, you're a great writer. Maybe journalism is in your future, or communications. Maybe you'll be working as one of the communications people for FCS someday, right? What if you like working with things in terms of art or fashion design? All right, we're getting 31 people have finished all their answers, and it's helpful to see maybe our panelists, I believe, are you able to see the results as well, our co-hosts there? So you can look ahead, even kind of plan your answers out. What part of high school are they most curious about? It looks like classes and friends are definitely up there. Only one person is interested in the teachers for high school. Shocking. And as far as the high schools we're looking ahead to, it's pretty close. I'm seeing a good spread between private schools, specialized high schools, the regional high schools, and then the kind of jobs I'm really intrigued by as well. Okay. So we have a tie between people in performance art and people working with computers for science. Good representation for medical people or teachers or counselors or ministers. So panelists, you're seeing these answers that will help you as you think through what you may want to share or advice you'd want to give as well as they look ahead. We'll give a few more seconds here to give our students or attenders a chance to answer these questions. And then Esther, maybe we'll just ask you about your experience in high school itself, what it was like applying for high school, and what kind of what the process was, and then the results and how to process that and sorting through options. And Tony and Rachel, if you want to make yourselves invisible right now, feel free to do that. We just want to hear from Esther about her high school experience. Esther, go ahead. Why don't you share? What was it like applying for high school and then settling in where you are now?
Yeah, so I remember distinctly that the process for applying to high school for me, it was super, like, I just thought of it as super intense and competitive. So I think I spent like a year studying for the SHSAT, for the specialized high school test. And I was very intent on like getting good grades in 7th grade and in 8th grade. And then I remember when I applied, I took the SHSAT and my first choice was Stuyvesant, and I really, really wanted to go there. And when the results came back, I remember I was 1 point away from getting in, like the cutoff, and I was super upset. And so then I was deciding between Bronx Science and Townsend. And at the time, I was super like disappointed, I guess you could say, because I feel like I spent so much time studying and preparing, and I didn't get the end result that I wanted. But I chose Townsend because it was close to home. Like, it's a 15-minute drive from my house, versus if I had went to Bronx Science, I would have to wake up earlier, and thus I would have less sleep. And also the people at Townsend, they were they were really nice, and I really liked the community. And after going there, I found like some of my best friends, my favorite organizations to join. And I was really happy that in the end I went to Townsend. And I think that was also like part of God's plan. Like you see that he's just so faithful, because when I first, like, I was so intent on getting into Stuyvesant, like I thought that that was the school for me to go to, and that I had to go there. But then you see like the whole journey, and looking back, I think if I had went to Stuyvesant, I would have lost so much more sleep. And in high school, you know how precious sleep is, and so that was a huge thing for me. And also, I think the Lord just showed me that all of my old concepts and my preconceived notions about going to whatever high school I want to was just, it could not compare to his plan for me. And that was, yeah, a very important part of choosing high school and the whole journey. So yeah, I'm looking back, I'm very, very glad that I chose to go to Townsend.
Thanks for sharing, Esther. And it's neat too, because I was among the teachers watching how you interacted with your classmates and your first reaction. I didn't get in, and a disappointment. At the same time, knowing that God has a plan for that. And really quick, my experience, I moved states in the middle of 7th grade. That was a pretty traumatic experience for me. But learning to recognize God's plan is bigger and better than my plan for myself, that really helped to build my faith, and it sounds like that was for you as well. Thanks for sharing. I'd like to hear from Tony. If Tony, you want to jump on with us. Tony, you're working right now in a setting that you would say is not very friendly or interactive with Christianity. And we just want to hear from you. What's it been like for you kind of in the secular setting where you are? How are you able to live out your faith, and what's that like in that experience, in that setting? And that could apply to high school level or even beyond where you are now.
So I'll start by, I guess, kind of touching on what my experience was uniquely in high school. I went to the Q4 school, which is an independent high school, and it's not affiliated with any religion, not a private Catholic school. It's not a private Christian school. It's just strictly, a private school. But I found that was really my first foray into the secular world, if you will, kind of outside my comfort zone of 9 years of being at FCS from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade. So really, it was a culture shock in many ways, but it was a matter of figuring out how I could use my, my upbringing, the backbone of my Christian faith that I used, that I created from FCS, from my time at FCS over to high school and beyond. And yes, it brought its struggles. I would be sitting here lying if I didn't tell you that I wasn't bullied. I certainly was. I was certainly deemed an outcast in many ways. But I think all in all, I never wavered from my faith, and I used that as the catalyst to keep going forward and moving on. 1 Corinthians 11:1 says, Paul said, follow my example because I follow Christ's example. Essentially, that's what it says. So that's really what I had to do. I had to follow the example of Christ to help me, carry through all the temptations, all the stresses and the anxieties that I had. And it worked out pretty well. I did it through high school. College, thankfully, was much better because, there was a little bit more liberty to decide how I picked my classes. And there was a Christian ministry on campus, so I was able to affiliate with that. When I got into New York Law School, a little bit of the same culture of college, but at the same time, had a little bit of a cliquish feel, but I was still able to maintain my identity. And I actually found that being in law school, a lot more people were very inclusive of my faith. They were very understanding of who I was and what my beliefs were, and I never felt discriminated for that. And then as I carried that into my career today, I'm very fortunate because a lot of my colleagues in my department, which is very small, only 6 or 7 colleagues, have faith-based backgrounds. Many of them are Christians. So I'm very fortunate that I don't feel like I separated too far. I felt like it was almost all aligned. And, to quote another verse, one of my favorite verses is from Proverbs: man makes plans, but the Lord determines the steps. So I couldn't have scripted this any better. Clearly, God had this in mind for me, to help me be a light among the world, to still use the skills and the talents that I acquired through my time of schooling, all the knowledge that I acquired from previous jobs, using that to, in the capacity that I use it and that I use it in today at ABC News. I'm very fortunate. I feel very blessed for that. And I really couldn't be any more thankful to him for that opportunity to really flex that muscle.
Oh, thanks for sharing. And that's helpful for our students because many of them are concerned, what's it going to be like in a high school setting where Christians aren't around, and yet you're able to share. Maybe we grow most when we're outside of the comfort zone. We grow the most when we're by ourselves, not remote learning, but by ourselves in the middle of a group of everybody else as the outsider. That's a really important reminder for us. Thanks for that. And you also mentioned the idea of finding good friends who could help support us, finding a Christian group, whether it's a club or elective or something else that really can help to reinforce what you've been learning and help you to live out your faith in a gracious way, in a clear way, and in a confident way as well. That's great. I'd like to hear a little bit from Rachel, if we can. Rachel, you've really been, it's neat to see how you're using your skills and trying to connect with people online. Our students, like everybody at this age, we love social media and using that technology that God has allowed to develop at this point to be able to connect with everybody else. You mind sharing just what that has been like for you? And at that point, we'll be able to get all the other questions from our participants, but maybe you can share some of what that experience has been like for you.
Sure. So I just want to kind of give a quick summary of how I got to where I am. So as I mentioned before, I took 3 years between college and grad school to make sure that education was something I wanted to be in. And I think God has kind of brought me all over the place. So my first year I spent teaching English in China. And then 2 years after that, I was actually teaching middle school English at Evangel, which is where some of you are planning to attend. And I think after those 3 years, I really knew, okay, I want to be an educator. So I went to England, got my master's, and shortly after I got back, I actually went into tutoring because the school year in England ends at the end of September. So I couldn't go back into teaching in a school at the time. I had to wait another school year. So I went into tutoring for the time being. I did it part-time originally because I was also getting married in the spring. So I was tutoring part-time and then also planning the wedding. And the more I tutored, the more I realized how much I loved it. I loved having those one-on-one connections with my students and being able to assist them in a way that was more geared towards them and their personal individual struggles. And so last summer, I decided to make this a full-time business. I kind of got in touch with other tutors who were also creating their own online businesses. And I combined my two loves. I loved teaching English as a second language, and I loved teaching English literature. So now I do both. And I think you can kind of see God's hand on that the whole way, because if you had asked me 5 years ago if I would consider making my own business, I would probably say, no, that sounds crazy. So I think really God showed me where he wanted me to be and showed me the gifts that I have and how teaching is one of them, but I don't have to be in a classroom in order to teach. And so that's kind of been my experience. I think since starting last summer, I have grown a lot, learning all of the technical aspects, such as using Zoom, learning how to advertise and market myself, which is not something I'd ever done before. But in general, I think I've come a long way, and now I'm a fully booked online tutor, and it's all because of God.
Great. And it's neat to hear that you shared that when you were trying out different aspects of the teaching career, you found something that gave you joy, that you enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
And you found that when you enjoy doing it, you want to go to work and you would find something that really helps other people. We often encourage our students, think of a career, think of a role that's connected to serving people. even if you're working with things, there are still people connected to things. And that way, there's always someone else in my mind when I'm working in some way. And it's neat to hear how God led you through all those paths, finding something you enjoyed, realizing this is a work for yourself kind of career. And so to kind of step outside your comfort zone even, and using the social media platform to build an audience and to generate income, that's pretty impressive. We're thankful that God has led you to that point. I'll invite all of our panelists to come and join us again. And we asked you earlier, our attenders, to give some answers. I'm going to share those results with you now. So if you are watching, you're seeing the results of the poll that we did earlier. So most of us are curious about the classes in high school. Slight advantage over the Friends. Wow, I'd expect the Friends to be higher. But you know what? We have very studious students. And that means you're really concerned about the classes. High school, it's a good spread. Perhaps specialized high school slightly edges out the private Christian schools, the regional high schools. And then you're looking ahead to your job. It's neat to see that spread as well. Really not one dominates. And it's a good experience for us as well. We want to encourage you as our students not to force you into a certain career, to find something that you really enjoy doing, that you could do it for the rest of your life and be okay with that. And maybe you've heard some of that already from our panelists. I'm going to the Q&A, and if you have questions you want to submit to our panelists, you can do that. We have maybe 5 to 10 minutes we can get to these, so we'd love to hear. I'm seeing several questions. Our panelists are looking at them as well. A lot of high school related questions, a few questions about how we stay close to God. Maybe we'll focus on those two topics right now. What high school you wanted to go to, even if you had to work in a part-time job in high school. And even just comparing Christian and public high schools, what that's like. Does either any of you panelists want to jump in on those kind of high school related questions?
I can sort of chime in about my choice. It was so the way I chose my high school was really more from an academic perspective. I decided to pick Q Forest because of the opportunity for me to really use it as a continuum from FCS. I think FCS really did an amazing job creating the building blocks for me to be where I am professionally. And I'm sure Rachel and Esther could agree. I found that, academically, I needed to be, I guess the word is like, kind of like activated, if you will. I needed that something to help me propel forward even more. And I found that Q4 has presented the best opportunity for me. So that's why I chose it.
Great. Rachel, you want to share some as well? Maybe I help you sort through the high school option and then even just kind of navigate your way through the high school experience with friends or otherwise.
Sure. So I actually didn't have much of a choice in high school because my parents moved my sister and I to Long Island. So I just ended up going to the school I was zoned for. I always tell people that the first thing I noticed from going to a Christian school to a public school was at lunchtime. When I got ready to pray over my lunch, I looked around and no one else was doing that. It was really jarring at first. I think I was fortunate because my school actually had a small Christian community. My high school was predominantly Jewish, but there was actually a Christian club at my school called Walking on Water. And I quickly connected with that because I wanted to find that Christian community again. And it's kind of funny because I also just naturally found friends who were Christians without knowing they were Christians. It's sort of like that light that you have inside of you attracts others, and you find out, oh, you're a Christian too. How cool. And so I think really finding other Christian friends was a great way for me to continue working on my faith throughout high school. But I also thought that connecting with non-Christian friends was great too. I think at first it was a little overwhelming, but as time went on, I realized that I was grateful to have both Christian and non-Christian friends. And I think God really helped me navigate getting used to being around more non-Christians than Christians for once. And so I am really grateful for my high school experience.
Awesome. And
actually, if I may, I just want to interject. I think that's really important to mention that if you leave FCS, don't feel like you only have to make friends with Christian people. Like, isn't that the beauty of who Jesus was? He made friends with the lepers, with the gamblers, with the tax collectors, with prostitutes. He made friends with everybody because that's who Jesus was. He was inclusive of everybody. So I think it's important that as long as you set an example and as long as you're true to your beliefs and you can interact with other people, I think that's really inspirational, and that speaks more to your faith and who you can identify with once you're outside the walls of FCS.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? Having a mix of friends, not just one cliquish group, but showing God's love consistently to everyone and learning from people. Everybody has skills and strengths and personalities that we can learn and grow from. And so I want to appreciate that. I'm seeing several questions in our Q&A about your experience at FCS and if that prepared you, how that prepared you for high school and beyond. Esther, maybe get your input on this. How did the time at FCS, was it good enough? Where you were like, math is overwhelming, or what is this? And then also perhaps what it's like to stay connected to your friends from FCS. That's a really meaningful question. I appreciate the person who asked that. How much did you stay connected? Perhaps it's easier to stay connected right now because of technology, but maybe share some of that transition time.
Yeah, so coming from FCS, I feel like all the teachers there and the whole community was very, very protective. And you're just like, I went to FCS from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade. So like, it was really my home for 9 years. And like just living and being raised in a very Christian community, it was also like a culture shock when I went to high school. I remember the first day, like, I think there was around 1,200 students at my high school, and that was just so much larger than like what I was used to at FCS. And also I feel like at FCS, the Bible classes, and I think we had Bible study in 7th grade. I don't remember, but we had like a lot of like Bible groups or like little fellowship groups, and I think that really prepared me because I remember just like studying the word, and I remember our Bible verses, our quizzes, we would have to memorize and write them all down. And I guess at that time, I didn't see how important it was. But when I entered high school, I saw that, every single thing that we learned in Bible class and every aspect of the Bible was so crucial because I remember like at first when I entered high school, when people would say things, I'd be really sensitive to them. But then over time, you kind of become insensitive because it just becomes a new norm. But just remembering all those verses that we memorized and all the lessons we had, I think it kept me grounded in the Lord. Even for a while, like in high school, there is a lot of peer pressure. And you do want to follow the worldly trends, like you want to be like your friends. And I experienced that a lot, but I remember just like coming back to the word and just praying to the Lord really kept me throughout the 4 years of high school. And about staying connected, I did stay connected with my friends. I think 2 years ago we had a Christmas meetup at someone's house, and that was pretty fun. And with staying connected, I would say just like what I did was mainly just like text through Snapchat or through text message, and ask about some like updates with my friends' lives. But yeah, that was pretty much all.
That's helpful to hear, definitely. Maybe you can comment just briefly, even just the academic preparation. Was it a big learning curve from FCS to the high school experience that you had?
I think it was a slight learning curve in terms of math and science because the courses that I had to take were, I think, very like more advanced than what I was used to, but I think it was still doable. A lot of the teachers, like if you just ask for help, I think that's like the most important thing, like when you go to high school, to not be afraid to ask teachers for help because they're super willing. And that's what I did. Like I would just like email a teacher or go to them for office hours. And for me, I had to write a lot. And I think Mr. Snavely did prepare us pretty well for that. In 8th grade, I remember writing the research paper. I had to complete a lot of writing assignments. And I think that was a slight learning curve, but overall, I think it is a transition, but it's definitely doable. It's not crazy or scary. It's just a learning process.
I guess if you finish 8th grade, the next level up is 9th grade. So, okay, this is 9th grade level work, not 8th grade level work. And yeah, we in our mind as a school, we want to help prepare you and all of our students to be prepared in every way, spiritually and also academically. And ideally, we want to teach you how to learn. So then you can ask for the help and really keep working on your own as you need to. And I also want to briefly comment on the idea that you had your fellowship groups. We do that. We have discipleship groups once a week, and we just talk through life issues honestly. And I think our students would probably say that's one of their favorite days of the week. Oh, no Bible class, but discipleship. Woo! We get to hang out and we talk through more issues of a roundtable format and looking how Scripture applies to where we are right now. It's a really meaningful time for us. Maybe just one more question that we'd love to have each of you share with. What advice would you give to someone at FCS right now in a few words? And perhaps what advice you would give to an FCS student 5 years from now, or maybe 4 years from now when they're in high school? What advice would you give now and then in high school? Tony, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So advice now is don't be afraid to take the jump into a new world. It's exciting. It means, especially if you're just graduating or you're about to graduate next year and you're very close to the finish line of going into high school. I think it's important to know that this is just another chapter that God has ordained in your life, and God willing, you will get through it. 4 years from now, when you get to the college level, when it's time to start in college, it's the same thing, just another chapter. As long as you are able to embrace the work that's before you, you have an idea of what career you have in mind you want to pursue, and you use that as the driving force to go forward, all while knowing that you have literally a guardian angel, Jesus, right over your shoulder. I think that you'll be fine. That's how I see it.
Great. Rachel, you mind sharing advice for our students now and perhaps in high school also?
Sure. So I'd say some advice for now, especially those of you who are planning to go to public school. Don't be afraid about being a Christian and being different from the people in your public school. God will give you opportunities to connect with other believers, but He will also give you opportunities that will challenge you. And those challenges are meant to grow you in your faith, not to put you down. So I would say, try to embrace and welcome those challenges that God puts your way, because He is just trying to grow you and strengthen you. And I would say once you get into high school and you're preparing for college, yes, I think the same thing applies. I think also just some practical advice. I would say follow what you're passionate about. I think when I was in high school, I was trying to join all of the clubs because I wanted to make sure my resume looked really great for college. But in the end, I think what really matters is that you're following what your dreams are, and you are pursuing a college degree that will take you to where you want to be, what your goals are. So I would say focus more on that than on trying to make your transcript and your resume for college look really good.
Great. Esther, last comments, last advice for our students?
Yeah, so for those of you guys in FCS now, I would say just work hard, trust in the Lord in all things, and be rooted in Him. I think that's like what really brought me throughout all these years. Like every single obstacle I faced, everything was just like when you have the Lord, it's just so much, you have so much more power, and you're able to get through all things. And I also really agreed with what Rachel said, like just doing what you love to do. I think that was also something I learned, like just to do what you're passionate about, and give it your all, instead of focusing on what other people might want you to do or what you think you should do. I think that, yeah, you should follow what you want to do and just do it with all your heart. And for those of you guys entering high school or who will be entering high school soon, I would say don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid of failure. A lot of the most valuable lessons that you learn come through making mistakes, and learning from them is the whole process. That's what's super important and valuable. And yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for sharing. We want to thank all of you guys for your willingness to join us for this time. For those who are watching, you see in the chat, you see their name, their class, like the year they graduated from FCS, and their email addresses in the chat feature here on the side. So if you want, you can look at that, email them. They gave permission, copyright is okay, and they're willing, if you want to follow up and ask them individual questions, you could do that. So I want to thank Rachel and Tony and Esther. I'm going to close this in prayer and we'll be finished here. I will just echo what we've shared a lot of. In these stories, you've heard different people, different experiences. Everybody has their own story. But what's really, when they look back, they can see that God was walking them step by step, stage by stage, challenging them, growing them in different ways. And so really at the end of this story, they're not the heroes. God is the hero because he's the one who's been bringing them. And really everyone on the panel, everybody watching as a attender, our stories aren't finished yet. We have more chapters to go. I think in that sense, we are growing in our faith. We're at times challenged, but always pushed to trust God and walk with him as we move forward. And so we want to give God honor because he's the one that we're celebrating. This is really all part of his broader story. He's just letting us be a part of that. So let me pray for us and then we'll be all done for our time today. God of glory, thank you for creating us each so uniquely with gifts and interests and personalities and experiences. And then we come together for a time at FCS and we learn from each other and we grow. And then we move on to high school and college and beyond. In one sense, our time at FCS will seem short and brief, and yet it can be a memorable one and an important one. So we pray that you would help our students right now to keep growing academically, to keep growing spiritually, to keep growing socially in every aspect, that as they finish their time at FCS, they will be prepared for the next chapter of their lives. We thank you for our panelists. We pray that you will bless Rachel and Tony and Esther and all the efforts that they have. We continue to entrust ourselves to you. We are willing to follow you as individuals, as a school. We want to see you use us and advance your own name because you are all glorious as our Savior, as our Creator, as our King. Bless us the rest of this day, and thank you for the lessons you're continuing to teach us. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be all set at this time, and hope you have a great day. Students, talk to each other, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.